From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Sports Line.
Hey there, Titans Talk on your television. Steve Layman here with you. Glad you are here with us on this Tuesday night on News Channel 5 Plus. A little different night, but a big-time result. It feels the same as Victory Monday, just on a Tuesday this week, as the Titans beat the Bills last night 34-31 at Nissan Stadium on Monday Night Football. One of the great Monday Night Football games that we've ever seen. 7 lead changes, tied a record for Monday Night Football. The Titans and Bills going back and forth, and in the end, the Titans were able to get the drive that they needed, and they were able to get the stop that they needed. Actually, 2 drives and 2 stops in the fourth quarter, because they got down there, they got a field goal. Defense got them the ball back. Titans drove the field. Derrick Henry gave them the lead with 3:05 left. And then the defense with that goal line stand or 4th down stand at the 3-yard line in the final seconds. Big Jeff Simmons coming up huge on that final play as the Titans milked out the win against the Bills 34-31. Were you there last night? What was your position on that fourth quarter and the final play, and what did you make of the way the Titans emerged from that game with a win over a team in the Bills that a lot of people thought was the class of the AFC coming in? And now, how does this change what you think about the start of the season for the Titans? Through 5 weeks, it was a lot of up and down play. A very, very nice win out in Seattle against the Seahawks in overtime. A very, very disappointing win in New York against the Jets. A couple division wins in there and a lead in the division. But last night was the first time that I think we can safely say we saw a team play fully complementary football for pretty much the entire course of the game. It wasn't perfect. There were things that have to be cleaned up, no question about it. But for 4 quarters last night, the Titans played a complementary style of football that can beat an elite team. I don't think we saw that in the first 5 games this year. We saw it last night, and they deserve a ton of credit for showing up and playing like that against that team and finding a way to win, as they have so often done over the last few years, really under Mike Vrabel, in these types of tight games. But I think it also has to change your impression of this team a little bit. Because until you actually saw it from this team, like you did last night, I don't know how you put them in that elite category. I don't know how you compare them to the Bills or to the Chiefs, who we'll see this weekend at Nissan Stadium, or some of the other elite teams in the AFC or around football. But last night's performance shows that when they're at their best, when they reach their maximum potential, the Titans can play with anybody. And you saw that last night. I don't even think it was max potential, but it was a good effort from 3 phases, complementary throughout, and it gave them the chance. And as we've seen with this team, when they have a chance, they're usually pretty clutch. And that was the case last night. Kevin Byard described it as resilience. That was the word as he was standing at the podium last night after the game with the media in front of him. That was the word he came up with to describe his team's personality and their effort last night. It was the perfect description, because even in that game, so many things needed individuals, units, or the entire team to overcome what had happened. I mean, let's just start at the top of the list. Jeff Simmons had been a guy that people wondered about his impact this season. The stats weren't necessarily there through the first few weeks of the year. Even last week in Jacksonville, he played great. The stat line doesn't necessarily show it, but he was absolutely impactful in that game. But that was the criticism, right? That the stats weren't matching what the hope was for Jeff Simmons' impact. Well, last night, he gets 5 tackles, 1 for a loss, a sack, a couple other quarterback hits, and he comes up with the huge 4th down stop at the end of the game to win the game. That's the impact you're looking for from Jeff Simmons. Kevin Byard had struggles last season. He did not live up to the lofty expectation for his own play last year. He just didn't. Last night, he gets an interception. That's 3 interceptions for the season, 3 turnovers in the last 2 weeks for Kevin Byard. That's kind of the redemption that you're talking about there. The defense gave up a lot of yards. They've had some struggles. But they bowed up at the goal line. They bowed up in the red zone. Even at the start of the game, the Titans were struggling offensively. Buffalo was moving the football, and the Titans defense was able to hold twice in 3 possessions of the first half when Buffalo reached the red zone. So instead of being down perhaps 10, 13, 14 nothing, it was a 6-0 game when Derrick Henry busted loose for that 76-yard touchdown run. That was just another highlight reel run in his signature career. And how about Derrick Henry? He had 8 yards through his first 4 carries last night. His 5th carry, 76-yard touchdown. Nobody expects him to be able to run as effectively against that Buffalo defense, which ranked 3rd in the league against the run. He goes for 143 yards and 3 TDs on the ground. Ryan Tannehill started the line 2 of 8 with an interception. That was a terrible ball down the middle of the field intended for Julio Jones. He finishes the night with 9 consecutive completions. A.J. Brown, coming off food poisoning, didn't look like himself in the first half. He comes out in the second half, has 7 receptions for 91 yards to lead the team. Julio Jones has had issues with the hamstring. They came back up again last night. But he comes out in the first half and leads the team in receiving as he got back into the lineup for the first time in a few weeks. The injuries kept mounting, but guys stepped up. They did their job. Sometimes they'd get beat on a play, but they would come back and try to learn from it and be better later on. Last night was about guts. It was about some guys getting some redemption. It was about all hands on deck. It was about staying together. And ultimately, it was that word that Kevin Byard used. It was about resiliency. There were a lot of points in that game last night. For the most part, the Titans were playing from behind. And there were a lot of points in that game where you thought it could teeter here. This could be sort of the break. Can they get themselves back into it? Can they stick around? Can they give themselves a chance in the fourth quarter? And every single time, the Titans answered the bell last night. Whether it be Derrick Henry with a run, Ryan Tannehill to A.J. Brown on 3rd down, the defense coming up with a stop when they needed it. Every single time, they came up with the goods. And that is very encouraging for this team because, again, we hadn't necessarily seen that so far this season. Second half in Seattle, maybe. Overtime in Seattle. I think we saw it there. But for an extended period of time, for an entire game, we haven't seen that yet. Last night we got that against the Bills. And I think it does change your mind on this team. It's still a difficult stretch here. You still have the Chiefs coming in this weekend. Then you go to Indy, which is probably the toughest remaining division game for the season that the Titans will have. Then it's off to L.A. for Sunday Night Football against a Rams team that looks really good. So this is a meaty part of the schedule right here. But going into the game last night, based off the way the Titans had played, I think there were real concerns that you're looking at 1-3, maybe even the potential for 0-4 in that stretch. You win that game last night, now you're thinking totally different. You got a home game against the Chiefs. You've already beaten the Colts. I mean, now it's basically a 3-game stretch. And I think there's a lot of people out there thinking, maybe the Titans can win 2 of these 3. That's how much it changes. And it just changes the perception of the division because the Colts are actually, minus that Titans game, in the easiest stretch they have of the entire season. So they got to 2-4 Sunday. They've now won 2 of their last 3 games. And they're going to rack up some wins here. They're going to be 5-5, maybe even 6-4 in a couple of weeks. But you know what? It's reasonable to think the Titans are going to be right there with them. And then the Colts schedule picks back up and gets more difficult, and the Titans schedule eases up a bit at that point. So the Titans have put themselves in a great position, up 2 games on the Colts in the AFC South, and they did it with the resiliency of last night and finding a way to get it done. And I thought, again, particularly impressive in the fourth quarter, the Titans have now won 13 games when they have trailed in the fourth quarter under Mike Vrabel in the last 4 years. 13 games. And last night was just another example. And again, you get the lead on a Derrick Henry touchdown. Bills come right back down the field. They answer. They look like a championship team with that response. They even get the 2-point conversion to go up a full 7 points. And you go into the fourth quarter like that, and you're wondering, all right, what does this team have? Because they kind of answered all night long, but you wondered at what point can they maybe not match the Bills drive for drive or point for point in this game? And sure enough, they go down the field. They get a field goal. And you thought, all right, it's a field goal. They're in the game. It's not a bad position. But now you have to have that defense step up because you can't give up another touchdown to the Bills at that point because that's probably curtains. And the defense gets a 3-and-out. Jeff Simmons with a huge sack. The Titans get the ball back, and that's when they take over. Tannehill again, final 9 passes, all complete. A.J. Brown was a monster. And Nick Westbrook-Akina, he has done a lot of under-the-radar things for this team. Last night, he had some huge blocks. He sprung Henry on the 76-yarder with his block outside. All of a sudden, he became a go-to target on that final possession. He had 3 catches, including a huge third down conversion that then set up Henry for the 13-yard touchdown that put the Titans on top. So you get a drive to get points, you get a defensive stop, and then you get a touchdown drive to take the lead, capped off by Henry. But there was still time. There's still more than 3 minutes. The defense had to get the job done. They'd lost a bunch of guys to injury, especially in the secondary. And Josh Allen's got the Bills down the field. But just like we saw in the first half, the Titans stood tall in the red zone. They buckled down inside the 20-yard line. As several guys said, we tried to defend every last blade of grass. And that's exactly what they did. You get an incompletion on second down from the 8-yard line. Third down, they hit Josh Allen out of bounds, half-yard short. And then I don't blame Sean McDermott. I thought it was the right call to go for fourth down and try to win it there because the Bills think they're the best team in football. Why not give your guys that confidence? Why kick a field goal to potentially go to overtime? Go for it. Go for it. Try to win the game right there. They thought they had it. It's fourth down, and Jeff Simmons again comes up with a huge play. All of those things complementary together to allow the Titans to come back. And as they've talked about many times, because we've seen it already this year, that game in Seattle, even the way they finished out the Colts a couple of weeks ago at Nissan Stadium, it's about putting teams away late. It's about finding those winning plays. And the Titans just don't panic. When things go poorly, they stick with it. They're going to fight to the end, and they believe they're going to get the job done. And yesterday was just another example of that in how they fought to the finish, and ultimately they came up with the plays they needed to win a huge game. And I think it has to make you feel differently about this team based off the way they did it. Now, here is the concern, the injuries. There is a real cost to what happened last night. We saw Taylor Lewan get carted out. Fortunately, there is no neck or spinal injury there. He is in concussion protocol. That's a concern for this week as you come back on short notice. But Taylor Lewan's going to be a part of this football team moving forward. Same cannot be said, sadly, for Cam Batson and Caleb Farley. The receiver and cornerback, respectively, tore their ACLs last night. They are both done for the season. Those are big blows for this Titans team, especially with Christian Fulton out defensively on injured reserve. He's going to miss at least the next 2 games after missing last night as well. And then you've got the nicks and the knacks. Jeremy McNichols left last night with a foot injury. You've got Chris Jackson, who filled in for Farley. He got hurt last night. Julio Jones in that hamstring continues to be a ginger sort of day-to-day, maybe series-to-series thing throughout the course of the season. You got the guys up front on the offensive line. Roger Saffold able to finish last night, but he's dealing with that shoulder injury. Ben Jones has been beaten up at times this year. This is a beat-up football team that does not have a bye until December. So they got to keep finding the way to get through this. And those injuries are mounting, and that is difficult. But again, they were able to find a way despite all those injuries last night. And that is a testament to, again, let's go back to that word, the resiliency that the Titans have shown. This season, and in total under Mike Vrabel. Our phone lines are open. 737-7767 is the number. We want to hear your thoughts on the game last night, and does it make you feel differently about this Titans team? And we will begin tonight with Gordon. Gordon, good evening, and welcome to Titans Talk.
Hi, Steve. First of all, I'm really proud of this team. I think if you had asked me before the game, I would have said they had like maybe a 20% chance of winning. And, sometimes you like to be wrong, and this is one of them. I just, can't say enough about what they did. But the injuries are certainly a concern. They have one less day to heal up this week. But I think if they can beat the Chiefs, beat Patrick Mahomes and crew, I think, they're definitely for real. I'd like your comment on a couple of things. Obviously, one of the things that the team needs to do is get healthy on the offensive line and elsewhere. But one thing that I haven't heard anybody else mention is we don't seem to have a really good kickoff return man. I mean, Cameron Batson has been okay. Gets the ball out to the 25, the 28. It seems to me they had a couple of others that they tried out earlier in the season, maybe McNichols, I'm not sure. But there doesn't seem to be a kickoff return guy who at any given kick can return it all the way or take it out to midfield. And I think that's something that would really help this team. The other question I have, and, Randy Bullock's done a really good job. He's made, I think, all but one extra point. He's made most of the field goals. But what is his range? Because he hasn't had to kick anything more than 46 yards. And, down the stretch, we get into the playoffs and the championship and maybe the Super Bowl. He might need to be able to kick one from 55, 58 yards. Is he capable of that? So those are my comments and my questions.
Yeah, that's a fair question, Gordon. I honestly can't tell you what Randy Bullock's range is. He's kicked some from above 50 in his NFL career, but we saw that kick from 49 at the end of the Jets game, and it was nowhere close, and it didn't look confident like some of the other balls he struck. He seems to be in a rhythm right now when it comes to the short stuff, when it comes to the extra points. He's been effective in that regard, but this is not the Titans of yesteryear with a Rob Baronis or a Ryan Suckup, or even last year at the end of the season with Stephen Gostkowski. I don't think you feel like you have sort of unlimited range and consistency from that kicking position, and that will be a worry as you move late into the season, especially in bad weather, and then obviously into the postseason, because so many times these games have to come down to kicks. It'll be interesting if Sam Ficken comes off of IR, if they decide to bring him back, because Ficken has a monster leg. So range is not an issue there. But he's had some ups and downs in terms of his accuracy in his career. And obviously he's just now spent time on injured reserve after winning the job back in training camp. And so that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But at least for right now, it seems to be a stabilized position from where it has been the last couple of years for this team. And that's a positive. The injuries are definitely a concern at just about every position. And that's something that you just have to be worried about because they have to get the offensive line to finally gel together. You need Taylor Lewan on that left side. By the way, you lost Ty Sambrailo last week when he decided to retire, so that hurts your depth on the offensive line. If anything should happen, like last night, you saw Kendall Lamb come in. I thought he played pretty well. For a guy who'd only had 13 snaps all season long, I thought he came in and he continued to pound out blocks. The Titans didn't give up a sack for the first time all season last night against the Bills. So that was okay, but you don't want to live like that. They've got to get that unit healed up, and they really have to find some bodies in the secondary. Dane Cruikshank even had to play some nickel and come into those positions last night as a safety. That's a concern for the Titans, for sure. Jackrabbit Jenkins has not been as good as they had hoped. Kristen Fulton had been, but now he's on injured reserve. Caleb Farley now is out for the season. Chris Jackson's nicked up. They need those bodies because they're going to have to throw different bodies at guys. They're going to have to throw different coverages at teams. Last night, they kind of patched it together on the back end. But they're going to need more from those guys as the season moves along, like this weekend against another team in the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, who love to throw the football around the park and have the guys to do it on the receiving end. So that's going to be a concern for the Titans as they get set for the game this weekend. Sneak in another phone call here. We'll go to line 2. Say hello to Nate. Nate, good evening and welcome to Titans Talk.
Yeah, how's it going, Steve?
Good.
All right, look, yeah, that was a great win last night, man. I was so happy, man. Them, the Bills Mafia, they came in here and they was real arrogant, and they just call themselves trying to take over the city, and I'm glad we sent them away with a big old L, man. And that was a good win last night. But I just want to ask you a question, man. Look, let's be honest, man. We pulled it out last night, but it could have went either way. And I just want your honest expectations on the season. Where do you see us going, and will we be able to depend on Julio Jones, man?
Hey, those are fair questions. And, Nate, I will tell you I feel differently after last night's game because we finally saw this team show that they can play with one of those elite teams. They can go back and forth, and that's how it is. I mean, I expect it to be a similar type game this weekend against Kansas City. You're talking about a team that's been in the Super Bowl each of the last 2 years as the representative of the AFC. The Bills beat them a couple weeks ago. Maybe some people thought they'd kind of taken over that mantle, but the Chiefs are still legit, and they still have an MVP-type quarterback in Patrick Mahomes. You're not likely to just walk into the stadium on Sunday and blow them out. You're going to have to get in a back-and-forth game. You're going to have to make plays on both sides of the ball. You're going to have to get that stop or hold them to a field goal. You're going to have to drive for points in the fourth quarter. That's just the reality more times than not in the NFL, especially when you're playing the elite teams. So it's another big opportunity and test for the Titans on Sunday against the Chiefs. I think they belong in the conversation with those teams, though. I don't think they have gotten to the point where they are as consistent as those teams, and maybe some of that has to do with the injuries. But right now, when I look at the AFC, I look at a Ravens team that has been great. I look at a Bills team that has been pretty darn dominant, with the exception of a fluky game in Week 1 and then a tough loss on the road on Monday Night Football last night. I look at a Chiefs team that, whatever the record is, has been to the Super Bowl the last 2 years. I look at a Chargers team that's putting up huge amounts of points with the exception of on Sunday in Baltimore. Those teams, to me, have kind of done it consistently over a longer period of time. The Titans have proven that they're a winning team. The question is, can they get to that next level and really be a contending team? I think the Titans are going to win the AFC South. I thought that going into last night, but I thought it might be ugly in the way they do it. I think now it's going to be disappointing if they don't win 11 or 12 games at least to win the AFC South. That's just how the expectation changed. And if they can win this weekend, if they can go to Indy next weekend, then all of a sudden you're talking about, can you get home field advantage? Can you win the number 1 seed in the AFC? That's what a couple of wins buoyed off of last night can do for the Titans. The last part of your question is about the health of Julio Jones. And that will go a long way to what the ultimate expectations for this team can be. Last night was a great win. A great win in how they did it offensively, how they stuck together and pieced it together. But at the end of the day, as big as the defense came up at points last night, in the red zone, with that late stop, with the interception early to get the offense really going at that point of the game, as big as the defense came up in those moments, they still gave up 31 points. This is still a defense that gives up a ton of yards and is going to give up points to the best offenses in the league. That's just the bottom line. So the Titans' offense has to be elite. It has to be an offense that can score 30 points week in and week out like they did last night, especially against the best teams in football. Derrick Henry has been an absolute monster. You're going to expect that night in and night out. A.J. Brown, if healthy, is a number 1 receiver. Ryan Tannehill, while the numbers have not been as good this year, has proven himself here in Tennessee as the perfect quarterback for what they're trying to do. But I don't think you can rely on those 3 alone. You got by last night. You've gotten by a lot this season with it. But the Titans have to become more explosive in the pass game. They have to take the top off of defenses. And they have to lessen the load on Derrick Henry. And I think the only way that happens is if they get Julio Jones in healthy. And he can consistently produce at the level of which he's produced his entire career. He showed that in the first half last night. He still wasn't healthy. But he gave them 3 catches for 59 yards, and they were big. One of them was one of the most amazing catches I've ever seen. Off that carom off the defender's helmet while he was getting pass interfered with and dragging the 2 feet along the sideline. I doubt he's going to be healthy Sunday against the Chiefs, but it sure helps this team if he can go. It may take him several weeks to get back to a place where he feels fully healthy. They may have to shuffle him in and out of the lineup at times, like they did last night, as it tightens up or whatever the course of a game or a practice week goes on. But ultimately, towards the end of the season and when this team gets to the playoffs, they need Julio Jones to be a big part of this offense. And so they need that hamstring to heal up. If he can get out there, I think you're looking at one of the best offenses in football. And I think it's the type of offense that with a defense that can be opportunistic, that can be good in the red zone, that's finding a little bit more of a pass rush to be able to get off the field on 3rd down. That's the type of offense that could lead this team not just into the playoffs as a division champion, but help them contend week in and week out in January, where it matters, against the Bills, against the Chiefs, against the Ravens. Because the Titans have proven they can beat those teams. The question is, can they do it over and over? Can they win 3 of those types of games and get themselves to the Super Bowl? And for that, I think you have to have a healthy Julio Jones clicking in an offense with all those other guys. Our phone lines are open. 737-7767 is the number. We would love to hear from you. Your thoughts on the win last night. Your thoughts on where this Titans team goes from here. We'll get to all that and more when we continue on here. This is Titans Talk on a Victory Tuesday on News Channel 5+.